An example in this case of a simple update to demonstrate here's what we're doing now versus here's what we aim to do. So example number 2. This is a big one. Probably the most substantive change because you have to completely redo element 2. The original element 2 had a list of, as it says, oh, I'm sorry, this is not element 2. This is goals and accomplishments. So originally we had this list of here's some things that we want to do. Our goal will be to enroll students in a rigorous academic program, lower class size in order to increase student-teacher contact, strongly encourage parent-guardian participation and intervention for students who drop below C average. As CPCHS, the new language says, we have been able to. This is something that was discussed at the board meeting last Thursday. The board had, I think, a really good discussion about it. And while there was, at the onset, some disagreement about how it was articulated, they came to agreement and directed staff to change. Enroll all students in a rigorous academic program that prepares them for success in higher education. Ensure that the student-teacher ratio is such that effective instruction and learning results are maintained. That was the board directive. Strongly encourage parent-guardian participation and intervention for students who drop below the C average. So you can see, in this case, in many ways, it's just an organizational shift into what we're doing now. Measurable outcomes, this is the big one. So we have this general list of goal areas, very specific API growth, graduation rates, attendance, all those metrics that I talked about earlier by goal area, right? That whole element 2 chart in the original. The new language is verbatim our WASC action plan with the LCAP state priorities. And I'll talk a little bit more about what those are in a second. Stuck in there. So again, you have that congruence between all 3 plans, which is absolutely best practice. Again, WASC, which was a 1.5-year process that involved 200 stakeholders, including parents, community members, teachers, staff, came up with these focus areas. Focus area number 1 was the implementation of Common Core State Standards, 21st century skills, and college and career readiness focus. The focus area number 2 is closing the achievement gap for our high-risk students and lower performing student populations, which we've already done amazing work at, but continues to need to do. And focus area number 3 was continue to implement and expand curriculum development strategies and programs. So we took those, the exact WASC action plan verbatim, put it into element 2 that became our new element 2 for the renewal petition. The only difference to align it with the local control accountability plan was to add which state priorities the different focus areas cover. And the 8 state priorities came out through the governor's new funding formula. They cover, as you can see here, basic services, which essentially it covers, you'll have a credentialed teacher in a classroom. You'll have access to books and materials. Implementation of state standards is a state priority, obviously aligns. Pupil achievement in general, pupil engagement, course access. Do different students and all of your demographics have access to a variety of courses? Other pupil outcomes includes some other metrics, AYP is in there, attendance and graduation rate are in there, parent involvement and pupil engagement. So those are the 8 state priorities. What I did and what we can see in element 2 is I just established which of those state priorities were covered in each of the WASC focus areas. So now you essentially, like I said, have all 3 documents in congruence. Example number 4, governance. So this is a change that's gotten a lot of attention, and I want to make sure, I think the board has addressed it to some extent, but I want to make sure you do a good job of explaining. So old language, the governing board shall propose standing and temporary or ad hoc committees to focus on specific tasks and or policies, such as those listed in the initial description of the governing board's purview stated previously. This is just a chunk of that section. Another chunk. The governing board may establish board policy on its own or through recommendations by standing committees or board-established ad hoc committees that will draft policy recommendations to submit to the governing board for approval. Old language. Language, to be honest, that we drafted and crafted before we were a school, before we really understood how our governance structure would shake out. Important for the initial establishment of the school. But the board has undergone both training and experience that has informed at least a better way to organize that structure without eliminating stakeholder involvement and engagement in that process. So the new differentiation, as has been talked about before, is advisory versus oversight. Any board committees will be known as oversight committees, and each will have its own bylaws approved by the board of directors. This is the new language. Any of the executive directors' committees will be known as advisory committees. And just to be clear, the 4 standing committees, technically only 3 that are operational, fall under the advisory committee umbrella in terms of what governance piece they are part of. All committees may work to draft recommendations that are in the areas of their purview that do not conflict with provisions of collective bargaining agreements based on the input they receive from stakeholders. I think it's important to know, I'm going to go a little further into this, but it's important to note that this is not a change that is, again, trying to sway or prevent stakeholder engagement. The standing committees were always advisory